of late, so I'm sure Will is not thrilled to have to speak on behalf of Taylor Lewan. But given that he went viral yesterday, a couple days after the game, for a blocking assignment that I don't know if you want to call it missed, but certainly something that went viral here locally of Budda Baker kind of punking him. We'll talk about that and where the Titans need to improve substantially. But I want to start here. And if you want to get involved, 615-737-1045 is the number, 615-737-1045. If you want to hang out in the studio with us, Zone TV is live and available. Twitter, YouTube, Twitch, and Facebook Live. I want to start with James Franklin, who is a familiar character to Nashville sports fans, whether you're a Vanderbilt fan or not. And maybe you're not necessarily a James Franklin fan if you are a Vanderbilt fan, but there is no denying that during his time on West End, he was one of the better coaches, if not one of the best coaches that Vanderbilt has had in the history of its program. He was able to find a way to make them competitive. He found talent that was willing to come to Nashville before Nashville really hit its true growth spurt, as we've seen in the last 5 or 6 years, 6 or 7 years. But now James Franklin, who is at Penn State, who will host the Auburn Tigers in Happy Valley on Saturday, Dan Patrick reported this morning as I was driving in that James Franklin and the University of Southern California, there is mutual interest between the two. Now, we made jokes yesterday at the expense of Urban Meyer, who basically the discussion being, how long will Urban Meyer last in the pros, and will he be the USC head coach before the NFL's trade deadline? And it's made tongue-in-cheek, right? Like, the idea of Urban Meyer actually taking a job like that, given that he's already one game into his NFL tenure, it is unthinkable. The only reason why there's any legitimacy to it is because if you said, okay, let's pick one coach who's most likely to Bobby Petrino his way the hell out of the NFL, who has a history of erratic retirements, shall we call it, and a tenuous health history, quote unquote. If there was a more likely candidate to exist that would jump after one game from the pros back to college, tuck his tail between his legs, and say, yeah, give me all your money, Southern Cal, Urban Meyer is that candidate made in a lab, right? He's perfect for that. That's the kind of stuff that we associate Urban Meyer with. It's not any kind of legitimate. It's just a funny joke to make. But James Franklin is an interesting situation because he clearly has designs on upward mobility, right? There was a commitment to Vanderbilt while he was here. Nobody did more grassroots campaigning to get people to come to Vanderbilt games than James Franklin did, right? I know he would call into this radio station, just be driving around, call into the radio station, and want to talk about the Vanderbilt game to try and drum up some excitement about who Vandy was going to play that weekend. So then he gets the Penn State job, and he has had varying degrees of success. Lucas, in fact, if you could look up for me James Franklin's record, just overall as a head coach, doesn't have to be specifically at Penn State, but if you could find that, that'd be helpful as well. He's had varying levels of success, right? He's had some good teams. He's had some teams that should have been better and may have been held back by coaching at certain points. And now he is, again, coming into a season as one of the primary competitors in the Big Ten, having defeated Wisconsin already early in Big Ten play, and now getting ready to, on a national stage against an SEC opponent, prove that he is able and capable of going toe-to-toe with one of the better programs, even as Auburn has a new and largely unproven head coach at this level. He's going to have the opportunity to strut his stuff. So does he make the most sense as the USC head coach? Is that even a desirable job right now? Lucas was telling me before we started the show that Eric Bieniemy, the offensive coordinator of the Kansas City Chiefs, one of the biggest slights in NFL head coaching hiring this most recent cycle, given that he did not get a job when he clearly deserves it as much as anybody else who got one of these jobs last year, if not more than some of the candidates that got jobs last year. Eric Bieniemy is also being discussed as potentially being the new head coach of the USC Trojans. Is that even a desirable thing for somebody like Eric Bieniemy? This is the kind of question that I wonder all the time, because there are benefits to being a college football head coach, right? Especially at a program like that, where you know there's no shortage of resources. You know that you're going to be the biggest thing in town, right? LA is a primarily college sports city. It's not the Rams. It's not the Chargers. It's probably the Dodgers. The Dodgers are beloved, and the Lakers are beloved. But after that, it's USC and UCLA in both college football and college basketball. That's the kind of platform that you immediately put yourself on. But also, USC's been trying to throw money at the problem. It's not Tennessee, but it's similar, right? Where you're just throwing fistfuls of money down a pit, and you can't seem to find the resolution because the foundation that you need to support whatever it is that you're trying to finance, it's simply not there yet.
Even though everything you need for a successful program is all there.
Texas the same, right? We played that clip of the Texas senator interviewing or grilling, more like it, grilling the president of the University of Texas, right? When he's discussing their move to the SEC. And the senator is saying, well, how big is your athletic department's budget? And he's saying, 200, 225, 250 mil, biggest in the country, basically. And she says, oh, well, so you're going to continue. And that's that's despite the success of the football team, because the football team notoriously, and even this past weekend, struggles very publicly. The University of Texas. Are they bad or not? More often than not, no. But you then have a situation where everybody is looking at you, at USC, at Texas, at Miami, and at Tennessee. These programs of historical greatness that have struggled to kind of find their last gasp at success in the last 10 to 15 years. What is there foundationally to make that seem like a more comfortable position? You can be the king of the castle as a college football head coach. You can have all of these things at your disposal. If you're in the right city, like Urban Meyer in Columbus, Ohio, you're God amongst man. As the head coach of the Ohio State Buckeyes, hell yes. And that's not the only situation like that across the spectrum of college football. But there are sufferings to that, right? There are going to be moments where that job, and oftentimes, is hugely taxing to you. Urban Meyer, for all of his health issues or not health issues, there is legitimacy to what he goes through and what these coaches go through because of the way that they work themselves just into borderline exhaustion, if not exhaustion. So James Franklin was asked about this earlier this week, apparently, yesterday, when he was, I guess he's getting put on these head coach replacement boards, these USC job boards. Reddit sections are talking about it. Everybody is starting to discuss, who makes the most sense as the next head coach of Southern Cal, right? The Athletic is writing major pieces on Bob Stoops and why he makes the most sense to come out of retirement, to come off of television and step back onto the sideline. But James Franklin is being asked about this at press conferences. And this is what he had to say.
As you guys know, I can't stand in any form of distraction. So I'll discuss this today with the Leadership Council so that we can make sure that all of our energy is on our preparation for Auburn. And that's how we'll handle it. I'm gonna talk to the Leadership Council today about it.
What's his record at Penn State?
Penn State at 62-28. He is 86-43 as a head coach. That is a 67 win percentage. And at Vanderbilt, 6-7, 9-4, 9-4 in 3 seasons, which is unthinkable at the moment.
Right. It's completely foreign.
That's literally as well as Butch Jones did at Tennessee. Back-to-back 9-win seasons. Butch Jones never eclipsed that with bowl wins in those 2 years.
And James Franklin did it at one of the most improbable places in all of college football.
It's one of the best college coaching jobs that I have ever seen done. On the field, obviously there were off-field issues. There was a whole can of worms with that. But on the field, that is one of the best jobs I've seen in my lifetime.
James Franklin came to my high school one time because he ended up recruiting one of my buddies that was on our high school football team to come play at Vandy. He was a tight end. His name was Steve Shoy. And so James Franklin came to a couple of our high school football practice. I've never witnessed anything like that in my life. He's an insane person.
Well, what do you mean? Like
He's like
coached up the high school team. Like
he's like interacting with the kids. He's interacting with the coaches. Like he's coming down the hallway screaming about how excited he is about Vanderbilt football.
Oh yeah.
Except he's in Evansville, Indiana, and you're like, where the hell is Vanderbilt? Like,
Yeah.
You don't. I had never seen anything like that in my life.
Because he didn't go, and Derek Mason kind of tried to go that route, but Derek Mason tried we want to win championships at Vanderbilt, and nobody could take that seriously, right? Like that's not going to happen at Vanderbilt. But Franklin kind of went in a different channel of bringing excitement to Vanderbilt football without unreasonable expectations, and he nailed it. The energy he brought was perfect, and it's kind of carried over to Penn State.
615-737-1045 is how you jump in on the conversation. I saw some they're just throwing names at the USC job right now. People talking about a Lane Kiffin reunion after that was one of the most brutal firings in recent memory, firing a dude on the tarmac after he was wildly underqualified to be there in the first place, and just, starstruck at a young age, Lane Kiffin. But the whole thing is fascinating to me. One of the best parts of college football is the college football coaching carousel, and it's already begun. We're not even 3 weeks into the season, and it's already starting up with Clay Helton out.
That's why I love college football.
At USC. Yeah, many people do. Well, in the games. The games are fun.
But the coaching carousel in college football is unlike any other.
Right, because nobody loses the carousel.
No, and it's literally constant. It's 24/7, 365.
It's like the NFL draft. It can go all year long if you want it to, and nobody loses. That's why everybody loves the draft. They're trafficking in your hope.
We're 2 weeks into the season. Most teams haven't started conference play. We're talking about the USC job. This is great.
It's the biggest story in college football. Maybe that's a college football program. We'll come back and we'll talk about the Tennessee Titans. Speaking of problems, they've got injury problems. They've got offensive line problems. They've got offensive play calling problems. They got chemistry problems. And also, they could probably use a little help on defense as well. We'll come back and talk about it coming up next. If you want to weigh in, 615-737-1045. Where do the Titans need to improve the most? If you had to pick one area for them to show legitimate improvement from week to week when they head out to Seattle on Sunday, I'd be curious to know your thoughts. We'll tell you ours coming up next.
Besides sports, what's the 3HL's favorite thing? It's the food that goes along with sports.
They were yummy.
And some loaded tots,
And
too.
the tots with
Asian
brisket.
zing. Asian zing was
See,
that
I'm
new flavor.
a brisket tots girl right now.
You know why you lick the sides of your ice cream sandwich?
So it doesn't melt all over you.
No. Usually people always say, let me get the other half of that.
Yeah.
You lick all the sides, they can't ask for the other half.
The 3HL with Brent Doherty, Don Davenport, and Ron Slay. Today starting at 3 on 104.5 The Zone.
what my expectations were for the Indianapolis team, but I haven't necessarily followed Seattle as closely in the offseason as I've followed the AFC South for, reasons that are clear and obvious to everyone. But in getting ready to to study up basically on the Seahawks, I wanted to see two things. One, how Russell Wilson was able to look as good as he did and be as hugely efficient as he was, because it did not look like any kind of a struggle for Russell Wilson against an Indianapolis Colts defense that was, by all accounts, one of the best, top 5 easily, top 3 probably, in all of football last year, right? Now, they lost some parts in Indy, but it's nothing that's dramatically changed, particularly their front seven. And Russell Wilson, famously, Seattle does not have an offensive line. So I wanted to see, one, how they were able to have the kind of success on the ground that they did, and what allowed Russell Wilson to kind of operate with such ease. It was crazy to watch how much of that game controlled, how much of the game Seattle controlled right out of the gate, with both defense and a running game when the passing game started to sputter a little bit. They found the kind of formula that's made them a successful franchise outside of Russell Wilson just trying to overpower people, out-talent people, which is what he can do, right? They've changed their offensive coordinator. It's curious to see how things would go from Darrell Bevell, who is now in Jacksonville and suffering along with all parties in Jacksonville, to now Shane Waldron, who comes by way of the Los Angeles Rams, like so many of these assistant coaches, and particularly offensive assistant coaches, do now. It is going to be here's what I'll say, because I watched the Seahawks and the Colts, and I've watched the Titans and the Cardinals probably by this point 3.5 times. It would be almost impossible for Russell Wilson to play better than Kyler Murray did on Sunday. Kyler Murray, it's not that the Titans' defense made him look that much better, because they did have some struggles. Some of the play calling issues from a year ago were still there under Shane Bowen and Mike Vrabel, something that probably should have been scrapped from their playbook, because we've seen them give up touchdowns on these zero blitz concepts before, and you can't eliminate all of your zero blitz concepts, but this play in particular, where the Cardinals scored a very easy touchdown. I believe his name's Superhorn. He does film breakdowns for Broadway Sports. Superhorn had the breakdown of that exact same play against the Pittsburgh Steelers, where they ran the exact same blitz concept and had a touchdown scored on them because they didn't have the necessary help in the secondary. And also the secondary is playing again in that formation. The secondary is playing 6-7 yards off the wide receivers, which is something they didn't promise to do away with, but the rebuild with the personnel and the indication that there was going to be a great more press man coverage played, that was one of those instances where it looked exactly the same as it did a year ago. And the result was exactly the same as it was a year ago. Touchdown. So it would be impossible, outside of those kind of slip-ups that gave the Cardinals an edge that they didn't necessarily need. Kyler Murray played as good a game as I've seen him play. He was making incredible throws down the field, pinpoint accuracy, the kind of accuracy that we have not seen Kyler Murray have. The launch point for him was not an issue. They were not able to bother him at the line of scrimmage by getting the hands up in the air, as we talked about, that caused him so many problems a season ago and really throughout the course of his career. So then the conversation becomes, all right, well, you know what the struggles were on the defensive side of the ball, and that wasn't by any stretch of the imagination. That wasn't by any stretch of the imagination the worst of their ills. Now, for some reason, they're talking about Mike Vrabel and Urban Meyer on First Take right now. I'm curious to know what that conversation is about, given that the Jags and the Titans won't play for a couple more weeks. But in the meantime, what can the Titans immediately correct over the course of now, 4 or 5 days of legitimate practice time and meetings? What can they correct of all the things that's kind of spiraled out of control for them against the Cardinals before they play the Seahawks? There's 4 problem areas that I think everybody highlighted out of last game, right? You look at the pass rush, And the pass rush was there. Harold Landry, if you go back and watch, just isolate him. I don't know how many people are going to go back and watch the film and isolate, 45 minutes of a condensed football game just watching Harold Landry snaps. But if you do, you will see some of the better pass rush moments from Harold Landry as we saw all throughout the course of last season. He played a really sound game. Now, some of the stuff that they were asking him to do, where they again dropped him into coverage in certain situations, and it wasn't even that Harold Landry was in coverage like in the flat. He was straight up playing inside linebacker for a couple of those snaps, which is something that still perplexes me. But Greg Cosell of NFL Films has talked me off the ledge about this enough times to know that this is just something that they're going to do. It's something that Pittsburgh did with Bud Dupree and TJ Watt. Even if, Harold Landry is not TJ Watt, or maybe not even Bud Dupree. But Harold Landry looked fine out there. The defense, while they did not disrupt Kyler Murray the way that you would want them to, it wasn't for a lack of effort. It wasn't for a lack of ability. That touchdown pass that Kyler Murray just whips into the back of the end zone to DeAndre Hopkins, who somehow, over the back of Jackrabbit Jenkins, gets 2 feet down, touchdown. It's one of the, we've seen DeAndre Hopkins do it a million times, but it still kind of shocks you every time you see somebody with that kind of body control make a play like that. Much less Kyler Murray having the accuracy on the run to drill it in there. Because as he gets that ball off, he's being taken to the ground by Harold Landry. Harold has him by the ankles and is dragging him down to the turf. And yet he gets a spectacular playoff. It's going to be difficult for Russell Wilson to have as good a game as Kyler Murray did. I've never seen Kyler Murray look like that. And you would say, well, of course, he's playing the Titans defense. But again, go back and look at that film on the defensive side of the ball. It was the result on defense. It was as bad as you think it was across the board on defense. I think it may be a little over-exaggerated at this point. Now, the third down situation is still horrendous. You cannot be giving up north of, now, not even 52%, but after the last game, 53% of your opponent's third downs that you allowed them to convert. That remains a legitimate struggle for the Titans right now. So where do you think they need to improve the most ahead of the Seahawks game? 615-737-1045. I think, and we'll talk about this more at length, because Will Compton's going to be on today. We do the Bussin' with the Boys segment every Wednesday. Obviously, Taylor Lewan is in the local news after that performance, and we will spend more time on the pass protection. Not even on the pass protection, but on him specifically, on Lewan specifically, later on in the show. But I'm watching that game back and saying, kicking, they now have Randy Bullock, who is lovingly referred to on the Pardon My Take podcast as Fat Randy. I believe we put it on a poll, Fat Randy, yes or no? The answer is yes, he's now your kicker. The Titans now on their 11th kicker in 3 years. Insane to me. 615-737-1045. So the kicking situation, you're almost numb to it, right? You shouldn't be. You need improvement. I don't think Stephen Gostkowski is coming back, despite the fact that we are now through the first week of the season and they don't have to guarantee the money that way if they don't want to. I think that the kicking situation, you just got to, say a Hail Mary every time they get ready to attempt a field goal, and at this point, even an extra point. Kicking, I'm going to put on the priority list a little further down, which is maybe not something I should do because that's clearly something that the Titans organization has done. 615-737-1045 is how you jump in on the conversation. The offensive chemistry was a problem, not just between the players on the field, but between Todd Downing and his offense. I thought that looked clunky. I expected it to look clunky, but I did not expect it to look clunky out of predictability, right? The number of times they ran on first down in the first quarter that put them behind just in the most obvious fashion possible. I know that as a media member, I'm literally a professional second guesser. I'm not on the sidelines in real time. I'm not in Todd Downing or Mike Vrabel's head when they're making the play call. And some of this stuff, I think you can do the analysis with a little better context or a little more, for lack of a better term, grace. But every one of us, And them watching on the sideline should have known after it was as obvious to everybody in the stadium as it was to the Arizona Cardinals defense that the first down runs was not necessarily the approach that they should be taking against the fronts that Arizona was trotting out there. And the result was that Derrick Henry could not get going until like a spurt in the third quarter, and by that time it was too late. They were down 17-0 before they knew what the hell was going on. It's not all the offense's fault, but it was a big part of what they were doing. Offensive predictability and lack of chemistry across the board. Is that correctable in a week? I'm not sure. They'll have to show us against Seattle. 615-737-1045. Where do they need to take the biggest step against the Seahawks? Because that defense has a lot of young parts. Jamal Adams is not the only star on that defense, even if he's the only one truly paid like one. There are playmakers all over that defensive front line, and you saw them against a Colts line that looks much worse than it did a year ago, but still was summarily handled at the line of scrimmage, much like the Titans were on Sunday. 615-737-1045. Travis is in Nashville. He wants to weigh in today. What's up, Travis?
Hey, what's up, Buck, man? I appreciate you taking my call. Hey, listen, I'm going to use my metaphor, man. I'm going to use dominoes to kind of talk about, one, what needs to improve and why I'm not blaming the defense for much of what happened on Sunday. You cannot give players like Kyler Murray, DeAndre Hopkins, A.J. Green, you cannot give those guys as many opportunities to do what they do. They are going to burn you. So offense, whereas our problem last year was defense could not get these offenses off the field on third down, our offense needed to be on the field more. You keep giving those guys those many opportunities, I don't care what kind of defense you got. They are going to get you, and we just gave them way too many opportunities. So I'm not tripping on defense. I think if our offense, particularly our offensive line, and everybody's been talking about it, if our offensive line can handle business, establish control at the line of scrimmage, whether we are running or passing, that is going to then allow our defense to shine more even against a Russell Wilson. If we can minimize the opportunities that we give Russell Wilson to do, because we know he's going to make some good plays, we just have to minimize the number of chances he gets to do that. So that's my take. I'd love to hear your response on that.
Yeah, I appreciate the call, Travis. Thank you. 615-737-1045. Here's what I'll say about that, right? The defense held up well early. They held up well until the dam broke. I'm called back to the 2019 season, right? The start of the 2019 season, where Marcus Mariota's starting, where the offense is struggling, where Derrick Henry is averaging about half as many offensive rush yards per game as he did when Ryan Tannehill took over. And I hearken back to that because the defense at the time with the MMCMB, Logan Ryan, Kenny Vaccaro, Kevin Byard, Adoree Jackson, the defense with Jarrell Casey, at that time, not yet a rookie, Jeffrey Simmons, because he didn't factor in until October, but the last iteration of the Titans defense, the Titans defensive core, Wesley Woodyard, Jayon Brown, all these guys, right? And they were only allowing 20 points per game throughout the early part of that season because they had to. They had to do it out of necessity. And that was a group functioning at the highest level that I think they were capable of at the time, while also being coordinated by one of the best defensive coaches in the history of the sport, Dean Pease. 20 points per game they were allowing because they had to suffocate the other team because Marcus Mariota wasn't able to operate that offense at a high level. It was a slog, right? The defense, what was that defense's primary issue was towards the end of the games, they would give up these long, just gashing run plays where they had done so well throughout basically 3.5 quarters, and then they just get burned on a long run because they're physically exhausted. They're spending way too much time out on the field. That's what Sunday's game against the Cardinals was reminiscent. For me, it was reminiscent of that time of the Titans in 2019 when the defense was doing all that it was capable of. Again, this defense has a lot to prove. I'm not saying that they're the 2019 defense. They're not anywhere close as of yet, and they have to show us that they can be some kind of close to that before we can make that leap. But how that game played out and how many 3-and-outs the Titans offense had and how often they were putting their defense in bad field positions, it was a struggle for them to maintain. And ultimately, they did not against an offense that was, blood in the water. They were ready for it. 615-737-1045. When we come back, we'll continue to talk about this. Where do the Titans need to improve the most before they play the Seattle Seahawks in Seattle? Your phone calls coming up next. I'm Buck Reising, and this is 104.5 The Zone.
From preseason, regular season, and the playoffs, we got you covered.
Oh, wow.
The Titan Station, 104.5 The Zone.
615-737-1045 is how you get involved. Let's start in McMinnville with Mark, who wants to talk about the Titans' offensive line. What's up, Mark?
What's going on, Buck?
Not much, buddy.
So I think the only answer to your question is it starts and ends with the offensive line. If the offensive line, has good play, you can control the ball by running the ball, you can pass. You have to control, the possession. What happened, exactly what you said, exactly what Travis said, is you gave that offense in Arizona way too many chances, and they had too much time on the field. You gave them the ball at the 1 yard line. You kept on giving them the ball in good field position. You have to control the ball. We know what this offense is predicated on. It's predicated on running to Derrick Henry, and you can even sometimes run to set up the pass and pass to set up the run. But your offensive line has to hold up.
Thanks for the call, Mark. 615-737-1045. Pass to set up the run. That's my thing. And it doesn't work everywhere, right? You can't it's not just playing a numbers game, because I know the analytics people would scream that Pro Football Focus is trying to bury you with it every time you log on to social media. But in the case of the Titans on Sunday, everybody in the world knows that Derrick Henry is going to get the ball at some point. But why does it have to be every time that you trot out on the field on first down? It doesn't. Free things up. Pass to set up your running game. You allow everything to become incredibly constipated at the line of scrimmage if you just keep trying to hammer him into the line when the line is fully prepared for you to do exactly that. It was not something that worked to their advantage. And honestly, like if that's what their strategy is going to be, then leave Dylan Radins active, put him out there instead of Jeff Swaim or Michael Pruitt or somebody on the end, and use just the additional offensive lineman as a tight end, because you can't get anything done with the 5 you got in front of you based on Sunday's result. I say that a bit tongue-in-cheek because that's not – obviously you need somebody more versatile than Dylan Radins, and it's a problem that he's a healthy scratch, but that's a conversation for another day. The offensive line got bullied, flat out pushed around across the board. I know that clip of Taylor Lewan's going viral, getting punked by Buda Baker. But watch Roger Saffold on that exact same play, where number 96 is walking Roger Saffold back into Ryan Tannehill, who still somehow manages to get that pass off. 615-737-1045. Let's go to John in Dixon, who wants to weigh in. What's up, John?
What's up? Hey, yeah, offensive line starts and ends there, like everybody says. Man, but what a buzzsaw of a defensive line Arizona has. Like, I can't be 100% mad at them. Like you said earlier, the defense, I saw flashes that I did not see all year last year.
Yes.
And there's promise there, but when you got two people playing like human cheat codes, what are you going to do? When you're seeing crazy passes made like that on the run at 100 miles an hour, you're like, yep, that's going to be one of those kind of days. But I do have a very petty hot take for you.
Hit me.
So, with Mr. Chandler Jones, I predict by halfway through the season, Mr. Jones gets hit with the old PED violation just like his brother. And that's very petty, and I don't care. I'll hang up. Have a good day.
Thanks, John.
Man.
He's like he's on drugs.
Probably got tested after that performance, to be honest.
I mean, he won NFC Defensive Player of the Week, by the way. Chandler Jones did. That is,
well deserved.
Yeah, I would say. I put it out there to no one's surprise. Chandler Jones, the NFC's Defensive Player of the Week.
Who led the Titans in sacks last year?
That's a good question.
Well, it's Harold Landry.
Was it?
With 5.5.
That I knew.
Chandler Jones had 5 in week 1. So, yeah, he's deserving of that honor.
Oh, my God. 615-737-1045. Let's go to Nick in Franklin, who wants to talk about Ryan Tannehill. Hello, Nick.
Hey, love the show.
Thank you.
Tannehill is a successful walk-on, basically, when you think about it. He can't afford not to practice. Again, it's a work ethic issue, whatever it is. I guess he had COVID for a while, but that's a huge issue. And Taylor Lewan is a bust.
Wait.
I mean, how much is he making? $20 million? I mean, oh, my God.
Okay, whoa. Nick, you got a bunch of stuff wrong there. Taylor Lewan is not – thank you for the call, 615-737-1045. I'll pull up Taylor Lewan's salary this year. It's not $20 million. I don't even think it's 15. In fact, Lucas, if you wouldn't mind doing that for me on Spotrac, what's Taylor Lewan making in the 2021 season? I believe it's somewhere north of it's right around 14 or 15 million dollars. But I know it goes up next year. So to call him a bust, I mean, he's 8 years in the NFL right now. This is not a bust. He's been one of the highest level left tackles in football. But here's what I'll say. So Taylor Lewan talks about a lot of left tackles in football, right? Andrew Whitworth and Joe Thomas and Trent Williams, who is 160 years old for the 49ers, but looked so good against the Lions on Sunday. I saw our buddy Brandon Thorne putting out a highlight reel of Trent Williams' work, and the dude looks spectacular. Taylor Lewan, he puts those kind of players at his position on a pedestal. But what's not talked about is those guys don't have the kind of games. Every once in a while, it's not that often, but every once in a while, Lewan has one of these performances.
He's making north of $11 million base salary in 2021. That goes up to almost $13 million next year, and then almost $15 million in 23.
So pennies for a left tackle. So let's not get dramatic. $20 million. He's making 80 over 5, and that number has gone down substantially in the last couple of years. Let's not get crazy. And then Tannehill work ethic. I don't know what the hell that guy's talking about. Ryan Tannehill doesn't have a work ethic problem. He just spent 10 days on the damn COVID list. By the way, you know who else is putting a bunch of people on the COVID list this week? The New Orleans Saints coaching staff.
Yeah, spent some time in Florida. That's what happened.
They're literally relocated in Florida. And so now everybody's getting COVID out of Florida. Shocking to no one. 615-737-1045. Ray is in Rochester, New York. Wants to talk about the Titans. What's up, Ray?
Hey, Buck. Thanks for taking my call. I agree with a lot of what you're saying, that we need to run more or pass more on first down instead of the obvious run. But when we do run it, what I've noticed when I rewatched the game is that our tight ends, Jeff Swaim in particular, are getting blown up at the point of attack. So either we need to run away from the tight end, do something opposite of obviously running away from the strong side, or maybe spread him out more when you're going to run, because Jeff Swain didn't look like he clearly had a good game, and I don't know how that's going to improve in 1 week of practice.
Right, and that's their primary blocking tight end at this point. Thanks for the call, Ray. That's a good point. And that's something they'll evaluate week to week, right? 615-737-1045. They will evaluate it week to week based on what it looked like, right? Because they saw exactly what we all saw, right? The blocking scheme for the tight ends when they're in 12 personnel, because that's how they started the game. 12 personnel, 2 wide receivers split out wide, 2 tight ends in line blocking. And neither of them were Ferkser, by the way. It bears noting. So Swaim, if you're going to use him as your primary blocking tight end, and he did drop a touchdown pass, by the way, also worth noting. It would have been a great catch for him to make, but it was a worse catch for him to drop, given the point where the Titans were at in the game, trailing. But what I'll say to you is that they will notice that on film, and they will make the requisite adjustments coming up this week. We will come back on the other side. Mike Vrabel will be speaking to the media at the podium at St. Thomas Sports Park. We'll carry that for you live. Your phone calls as well, 615-737-1045. I'm Buck Reising. This is 1045 The Zone.
Your Titans head to the Pacific Northwest, where Russell Wilson and the Seattle Seahawks await.
Let's see what we're going to get.
Coverage starts Sunday at noon, and then kickoff at 3:25 on your home for Titans football. 1045 The Zone.
This is
person. We'll make it quick because Mike Vrabel's already at the podium, and we will hear from the Titans head coach right now.
Quickly and, performed well in practice and in the opportunities in the game. So that's really all we ask of anybody that's coming in here new is just to pick it up as fast as you can and take advantage of every opportunity you get.
Talked about trying to get some more targets for AJ and Julio the other day. I wonder if you could talk about kind of the balance between trying to get guys more targets and forcing balls.
Yeah, I mean, every play is, got some first read options, some second read options, and, so you try to design plays for guys that you think will be in good position. Sometimes that always doesn't work, and I think that's up to the quarterback to progress through and not to force it, not just to throw it into a team meeting just for the sake of saying we're going to try to get this guy the football or, so I think that's important now, how the quarterback distributes the ball. I mean, he's in charge of the football, and he's got reads that take him to certain places on every play.
What did you think of the separation?
Follow up, John. Just be louder than Paul when you follow
Possible.
up.
The one on Julio, the one that wound up being an interception. Is that an example of maybe trying to force it in to a situation there, or was that a reasonable expectation of a catch there?
I mean, I think that we always expect guys that when it hits them in their hands. I mean, I think that whether there's in traffic or not, I mean, I think that Ryan's trying to progress through and went to the second window. I mean, there's a lot of plays we'd like to have back. So, hopefully this week when we get presented with the same situation, we'll be able to execute.
What do you think of the separation and speed, and how much better can you be in those departments?
We can be better in every department. I mean, if you're basing off Sundays, what we did Sunday, I would say that we can be better in every category that you could mention, whether it's speed, pass rush, running the football, blocking, tackling. That's just what it's going to be.
When you're in that situation where there's a lot of things that need correcting, how do you decide sort of what to emphasize, and is it possible to overwhelm? I mean, I'm sure you're not standing in a meeting with 30 different points of emphasis.
No, I mean, I think the emphasis is what we feel like is going to be important this week, being able to get going here on Seattle, their schemes, their personnel, our game plan, handling the atmosphere, the weather, the environment, everything that goes into traveling out there and playing. So, certainly don't want to overwhelm anybody. And, we talked about, trying to be precise and not be perfect. You're never going to be perfect, but, precise is pretty darn good. And, that's understanding what you're supposed to be doing, moving with a great speed, understanding what the concepts are, but, not living in this world of being perfect that if this happens and that happens, and you can't play the game like that.
Was made some losses in the past that you guys have bounced back from really well, and this seems to set up like a situation what goes on in that locker room after a loss maybe like that, where they're let down to season opener and you've got a big test here coming up?
I mean, the process is obviously everybody's disappointed after you lose. I mean, we've moved on. You have to, and so the full emphasis is about Seattle and changing our mindset to them, which I think we have. I know we have. Having watched tape and visited with the players already today, and their meetings and what we're going to be able to go do on the practice field is about having a great practice. Start stringing plays together. If it's not a play you like, then we got to move on and keep going, make the corrections after practice, and then come back and start to add in some of the situational stuff with third down in the red zone and get ready to travel.
A lot was made about your comments, your response when asked about Julio Jones' penalty. I know you've used that phrase before, but was that sending a message, or was it just simply a response?
I don't think I've ever said anything in front of you guys or these cameras or this microphone that I haven't said to the players. I mean, I hope not. That's never my intent. They've heard it, from me well before I've come out here. So, and that just happened to be that specific play. And it could be somebody else the next time. I mean, we're just trying to coach, the actions and not the result. Sometimes that doesn't get flagged, right? But the next time it will. Or, maybe there's a holding or a block in the back that doesn't get called. Well, we're still going to coach it, we're going to coach it whether it gets called or not. So we're trying to focus on the actions and maybe not the results.
Sign, you think of depth on your team, or the fact that the rookies haven't developed as well as you'd like, that you didn't get much participation from the rookies earlier?
I think that all depends. I see both sides of it. Preparation throughout the week, the competition through the week, the emphasis on special teams, and there's a lot that goes into it. We would like to try to continue to get those guys going as much as we can. I'm in full agreement, with that, and that's something that, we'll have to continue to do and emphasize. The reps that they do get on the show team, are critical for the evaluation and for their development.
What kind of a problem does DK Metcalf present?
Well, I mean, there's just a size and strength and speed element that he has, and so you've got a big man that runs fast, that's strong, and I think if you get off balance, he's got the ability to knock you by and use his strength, and then also some of his run after the catch. So there's a lot of problems, a lot of issues, and Lockett is obviously so in tune with the quarterback and their ability to hit plays down the field routinely over and over. I mean, every game it seems like there's an amazing catch in the end zone or down the field or close to the sidelines that's really, really impressive.
What can Bud build on out of that? What do you expect from him next?
We go through these expectations, and it's the same for every player. Prepare throughout the week, get your body as ready to play as you possibly can, and go out, know what to do, play fast and aggressive, impact the game, try to follow the keys, try to execute the keys, and try to help the team win. That would be the expectation for every play.
But you mentioned level, like I guess Randy Bullock, and how much you're hoping he just does the job. You don't have to worry about kicking.
Every time we go out there to kick, I hope they do their job, Jim. No matter who it is, whether it's Brett Kern, whether it's Randy, or the 53 other kickers that we've had here in the 3 years that I've been here.
You mentioned Carson the other day. Just what impresses you the most as a running back?
Runs hard, runs violent, runs behind his pads, got a good stiff arm. You saw him break a 3rd and 1, and stiff arm for another, 15 extra yards. So catches the ball well. They work him in the screen game and work him out of the backfield. He's in there on 3rd down. So, he's done a really good job for him. And, he's a challenge like there is every week. And this week it's him.
What happened with Ficken? Do you feel like you need somebody behind Randy now?
Yeah, we're continuing to evaluate that, but I think that's always something that we're talking about and discussing, having the ability to carry somebody in the case of an emergency, in case of, obviously we're still dealing with COVID and testing and those types of things. So we'll continue to look at that. Thank you. Go.
And is he still? I mean, I know he was hurt at the time, but is he?
Tucker's not on our team right now, so I don't know. I wouldn't want to comment on Tucker or players that aren't on our team. I think that that wouldn't be for me to answer. Thanks, guys.
Titans head coach Mike Vrabel and the 53 other kickers that they've had since he's been in Nashville.
He is so fed up.
Everybody is, but at a certain point, Randy Bullock's their 11th damn kicker since 2019?
Oh, I can't imagine the frustration because that's the position he has the least control over. That's the position he can impact the least as a coach.
It is unbelievable, the amount of bad luck, because it's probably, they've botched the main event, right? They're going to continue to get blamed for the kicking situation because of how poorly Ryan Suckup was handled there, the way they brought him back too early, and then they put him on IR again, then they release him, he gets healthy, and now he's a Super Bowl champion. So, they're going to get crushed for that because of how all of this started with the botching of Ryan Succup's situation. But if you want to weigh in from anything on anything that you just heard from the head coach, the number is 615-737-1045. Mike Vrabel talking about the rookies Two in particular that were inactive, Dylan Radins and Rashad Weaver, that we had many questions about. And what's happening with the kicking situation. Every time we go out there to kick, I hope they do their job, whether it's Brett, he's talking about Kern, Randy, he means Bullock, or the 53 other kickers we've had since I've been here. Mike Vrabel. Unbelievable. All right, we will come back. Why don't we do the dumbest thing in sports this week? Let's do that. Coming up next, I'm Buck Reising. This is 104.5 The Zone.
It's a college football Saturday doubleheader. First, kicking off at 11, it's the Vols hosting Tennessee Tech. Then at 6, Georgia clashes with South Carolina in an SEC Saturday night showdown. Coverage starts Saturday morning at 9:30 on your home for the Vols and SEC football. 104.5 The Zone.
When it comes to getting a quality college education, you don't have to choose between affordability and real earning potential. At Trevecca, graduates with a bachelor's degree earn the second highest average salaries in Tennessee according to grad reports. Combine that with low tuition, academic excellence, and a caring campus community in the heart of Nashville, and you have one special university
slams Julio Jones. So stupid. Now, Blaine Bishop and I got into it, not into an argument about this, but into a discussion about Mike Vrabel saying, don't do dumb bleep that hurts the team at a press conference. And by the way, speaking of dumb bleep, it's time for the dumbest thing in sports this week. 615-737-1045. Load them up if you've got a nominee. There's plenty to feast off a ridiculous weekend of college and NFL football. 615-737-1045 is how you let us know who the dumbest thing or what the dumbest thing in sports was this week. But when so Blaine Bishop and I are having this discussion because I told Blaine, yeah, we had to dump out of the press conference because Mike cussed. And Blaine gets into this conversation about, well, he should be held to a higher standard. Why don't you hold Mike Vrabel to a higher standard? He shouldn't be allowed to cuss at the podium. And my position was, well, it doesn't bother me. Like, I don't care. Like Mike doesn't, I don't necessarily know that Mike thinks he's on terrestrial radio while he's giving a press conference. I think he's just talking to the assembled media. I don't think that's that big of a deal. Now, what Blaine told me is that Jeff Fisher never cussed and didn't really cuss on the practice field, which I can't imagine a football coach not cursing profusely on a practice field. But, maybe that's because Mike Vrabel's been my experience. So,
I mean, I would hate it if it was every other word because it would make my life miserable, but it doesn't bother me. I think that gives it a little more meaning.
I mean, and what he said there today, because Teron rightly asked him, hey, I don't know if Mike Vrabel's watching First Take, but it was everywhere, right? It was all across the sports networks yesterday, and because Julio Jones is a big enough name that he attracts that kind of attention, that's where it spun out of control, 615-737-1045. But ultimately, I looked at that and said, yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily have a problem with it. Now, Blaine comes from a different time of NFL and the NFL coaches and the way that they conduct their business. And maybe perhaps to him that's not acceptable. In fact, I know it's not acceptable to Blaine because that's what he said. But I don't know that I want to that I'm going to sit there in a press conference, hear Mike Vrabel say any of the curse words and be like, hey, now, Mike, they're children listening. Like that.
Think of the children.
Think of the children. Because every time somebody says that to me about the radio show, because, every once in a while I tend to use a bit more profanity than your average midday radio host might, perhaps. Because I get DMs on, like, Facebook, right? from people who are of an older generation. Facebook is the primary communication. That's fine. And every once in a while I'll say, I just wish you wouldn't curse so much. just wish you wouldn't curse so much. And on the one hand, I want to be respectful of that because, I don't know who's listening. And on the other hand, more realistically, I'm thinking, well, it's not my job to raise your children. You do it. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's not my thing. So that's kind of the way I look at Mike Vrabel. Anyway, let's do the dumbest thing in sports this week. You ready?
Let's be honest. You've already seen something this week that made you say,
what the is this?
That's bullshit.
What the hell? Give me some more now.
Something so mind-numbingly idiotic that you just want to get it off your chest.
Dumber than a second coat of paint.
Some idiot. You are really dumb. For real. It's the dumbest thing in sports this week on the Buck Reising Show.
615-737-1045. 615-737-1045. What's the dumbest thing in sports this week? Lucas, you want to start the betting? You ready to go?
Sure.
Go ahead.
As you know, I was on the call last night for what was a really fun game. Anytime Belmont and Lipscomb play in any sport, doesn't matter, the court, the field, whatever, always really fun to watch the Battle of the Boulevard. But I was broadcasting Lipscomb and Belmont men's soccer in the Battle of the Boulevard. It ended in a 1-1 draw. My dumbest thing in sports this week are college soccer rules. And I know this doesn't appeal to most people out there that aren't soccer heads like me, but I don't know any other sport that changes up the rules more for college level than soccer in America, and I don't understand it. At the very depth of that game, 90 minutes, it's 1-1 game. They have 2 10-minute periods of overtime, and if it's a draw at the end, if it's still tied, they just end in a draw. But the clock counts down in college soccer, other than every other level of soccer where the clock counts up. There's stoppage time added for time made up for injuries and stoppages and whatever, so that they can let plays develop at the end. And there's not a hard zero stop because soccer is a very fluid sport. And when there's stoppage time given, if 93 minutes of stoppage time are given, and you're in the 93rd minute, and it's at the end, and a team is on the attack, and they're in the box. You're not going to cut the game dead with the team about to score. You're going to let them finish the scoring chance, and then you call the game dead. But the clock counts down. Lipscomb at the end scores when zero. Like at the moment the clock hits zero, Lipscomb scores. They're celebrating. It's crazy. And the referee says no goal. Time ran out. Players stream out on the field. There's some pushing and shoving going on. But my dumbest thing in sports this week are college soccer rules for clocks counting down rather than up, and for the unlimited subs, which drives broadcasters insane because they're going in and out like freaking hockey players. And I just don't understand why we have to do it our way with college soccer in America and change basically all the fundamental rules of the sport. That's my dumbest thing in sports.
In the time that it took you to start that rant, I got 3 DMs on Instagram saying, boo Lucas, boo soccer.
Yes.
Now be honest with me, all right? Did you set all of that up just so you could play the call of your call on this game last
No,
night?
I did not. I did not have that intention.
You didn't. Do you even have it?
I could grab it, but I did not have that intention.
Okay, because that would have been a very me move, and I could not have been more proud of you if that was the route that you were going to go.
I don't care if people hear the call or not. My dumbest thing in sports are just college soccer rules in general, and just changing up rules that fundamentally.
Yeah, that's
for one. I just don't get it. It just makes no sense to me. It's stupid. It changes the game, and it's my dumbest thing in sports this week.
615-737-1045. What's the dumbest thing in sports this week? Casey, one of our favorites in Lewisburg, has a nominee. What's up, Casey?
What's up, Buck, man? So, I'm a Baltimore fan, so I was checking out the Monday night game over the last couple of days, and I would have to say the dumbest thing is the Raiders. I mean, they're hugging everybody, man. They're thinking they'll get the touchdown before it's even on the board. You got to know it's going to be reviewed, but obviously he was down at the one. Then your man throws a pick in the end zone, and now you got a chance to lose the game. So, I would have to go with the Raiders on that. But yeah, man, how y'all doing, man? I haven't talked to y'all in a while.
We're doing great, Casey. I appreciate the call. It's good to hear from you, buddy. 615-737-1045. Yeah, how the Ravens and the Raiders game, they thought it ended because Peyton Manning, I'm watching the Manning broadcast, and he's like, oh, they're not really going to bring everybody back out on the field because he wants the offense to, get the touchdown on the walk-off and not have it reviewed. I did find that element of it funny. And also Alex Leatherwood, who they overdrafted out of Alabama, to false start on first and goal. Or what was it, first and goal? I can't remember.
It was right there it might have been second and goal, but it was on the one.
They're on the one to false start, and then the next play have your quarterback throw an interception. Disaster. 615-737-1045. What's the dumbest thing in sports this week? So I've gone back and forth on this a great deal because on the one hand, I looked at the Urban Meyer situation and said, I think it's ridiculous what people are saying about Urban Meyer potentially going to USC after he's already 1 week in to the NFL. Now, Lucas, you said that he spoke to the media earlier today, and I believe if you could pull up his quote specifically, I don't know if you have the audio or if you just have the tweet. Either is fine. But what Urban Meyer had to say in response to the question from the reporter, I heard the question itself was questionable. But why don't we hear it for ourselves, courtesy of the Jacksonville press conference?
Unfortunately for you, some rumors came out yesterday connecting you to the USC job. I just want to give you the opportunity to refute it so that you can put it to bed.
There's no chance. I'm here and committed to try to build an organization.
Okay. Unfortunately for you, some rumors came out.
All right, so that's the clip. Now here's where I want to start with it, okay? Because the idea of it in principle, like we talked about earlier to start the show when we were talking about James Franklin and what Dan Patrick was reporting, mutual interest between the former Vanderbilt, now Penn State head coach and USC. We talked about how the idea of Urban Meyer being the one person who you could imagine doing something this ridiculous and this shady, he's a perfect candidate for it. Now, the idea itself is utterly ridiculous, and I don't think anybody is actually thinking that Urban Meyer is going to say that. What my dumbest thing in sports this week is the way that press conference question was just asked. Can we hear that again for the people, just in case they missed it?
Unfortunately for you, some rumors came out yesterday connecting you to the USC job. I just want to give you the opportunity to refute it so that you can put it to bed.
No chance.
All right, I don't care about that. Unfortunately for you, Urban, I'm so sorry, Urban. I apologize for having to ask you the question.
Yeah, that was weak.
That you can immediately refute it, Urban. I'm going to give you the opportunity. I'm so sorry that you have to go through this, that your good name has been besmirched in such a way, as I'm watching him in his teal pullover right now on SportsCenter, arms folded, looking miserable, having to answer questions. God, it's only a matter of time before he starts clutching at his heart and this thing ends in a fireball. Like, it's it's so ridiculous. And I don't know who that reporter is. I have asked some bad questions in my lifetime, all right? I am not throwing stones from a glass house. I have been bad in press conferences myself many times, not just one. But that is some of the weakest bull bleep that I've ever heard. I'm so sorry to have to put you out, Coach Meyer, by asking you this question. Here, allow me to offer you the opportunity to refute these nasty rumors and allegations that are swirling around you. That's the dumbest thing in sports this week.
I will push back on you that you've kind of said that there's no basis with the Urban Meyer stuff, and there's not. There's absolutely not. But how many times have we seen Urban Meyer lie through his teeth at a press conference?
Oh, plenty.
Like you're not going to be actually surprised, right, if you were to just bail 2 weeks from now for the USC job.
No, like I'm saying, he's the most believable person that you could find to be in this particular situation.
Right.
But what I'm saying is, like, there is no legitimate reporting right now that Urban Meyer is seriously considering the USC job, right?
Yeah,
it's all just fun at his expense.
Well, it was that Reddit account that's verified, Reddit College Football and Twitter, saying sources, Urban Meyer is considering because his heart's not in it in Jacksonville. But I couldn't tell if that was serious or not.
Buddy, you go ahead and get your reporting from Reddit.
Yeah, no, I'll hold back on that.
You'd be like one of these fringe individuals that gets their news off TikTok.
But let's just remember Nick Saban back in 2007. Like, I'm not going to Alabama, all right? You can quit asking me about it.
Both the quarterbacks are great, so quit asking. Poor Maria Taylor. Actually, a great moment by Maria Taylor. Anyway, what's the dumbest thing in sports this week? Cameron is in Lebanon. He wants to weigh in. What's up, Cameron?
Hey, am I allowed to say the entire University of Tennessee football team?
Is
that a valid statement?
You may, but you have to explain yourself, of course.
I mean, just going in with some expectation of, I will not say greatness, I will not even say any sort of standard, but just the glimmer of hope that we all had. And go in and just, I mean, you know, Joe Milton, the greatness that could be there, overthrowing everything by at least 10 yards. And then having to come out of the game. I mean, it's really just hopeless at this point. So, I don't know. We could just be so much better, and we never will be.
Cameron says, shoot it all into the sun. Kill it with fire. I love that. 615-7. I don't love that because she sounds very sad.
Fed up.
Like, I know it's not even angry anymore. It's just spitting. It was like Lucas yesterday. Lucas on the phone today, too. What is wrong with you lately? 2 games in and you're already ruined your college football season?
What did I do on the phone today?
I forget what we were talking. So your friend had some kind of reporting about the University of Tennessee that we were talking about?
Oh, it was my guy Dan Harrelson of Vols Wire. Joel Klatt mentioned that Tennessee, Vol Twitter was blowing up about it. Joel Klatt mentioned that Lincoln Riley could be a good fit and a target for the USC job. And Dan Harrelson had somebody on his podcast, Tennessee Two-A-Days, back in the summer that he was talking about, you know, if the Oklahoma job were to ever open, would they target Josh Heupel? And Vol Twitter kind of took and ran with it. Wasn't any kind of concrete report because I haven't seen Lincoln Riley.
No, but what did you do? You said you were rooting for it at this point.
Oh no, I'm not rooting for it. I'm just saying at this point, this is just how it is. This is the world we live in.
You're 2 games into your season. You cannot live this way. And also, that should be considered a fine for you. If my thing is this is the place that we find ourselves in, then yours is this is the world that we live in.
Okay, that's fair, but that's the first time I've ever said that.
That's not true at all. 615-737-1045. We also go to the tweets because the people are chiming in voraciously on social media. What are they saying?
Bucket says Buda Baker putting Luan in his place. No way that should ever happen with ever in all caps.
Yeah, so I asked around about what happened because I'm no expert on offensive line play, and we'll talk about Taylor Lewan specifically before Will Compton joins us at 12:20 of Bussin' with the Boys for our weekly installment. So I watched that play back, and I sent it around to a couple people to help explain to me what exactly I was watching, because how the hell does a 185 or 95-pound safety just topple a 300-pound offensive tackle? And so you watch it back, and the analysis that I was sent was that Taylor Lewan looks like he's preparing for Budda Baker to go outside of him around the edge. Instead, Budda Baker goes inside, pushes right into Taylor Lewan's chest. He overcorrects. He loses balance. He falls over. The optics are horrific. Really, really bad.
Blake Tucker says, I'm the dumbest thing in sports this week, as in him, for believing the Titans hype. Matt says the Titans coaching staff, we should have seen these coming.
Look at a bunch of masochists. Look at it.
Right. Brian does say the overreactions of a week 1 loss. And Big Vitamins guy on Twitter says Andy Dalton starting football games when Justin Fields is on the same team.
Is Big Vitamins guy the guy who called in and alleged that Chandler Jones was on PEDs? He trying to sell him something?
I don't know, but he's had a rough go of it. His Twitter bio says, bear down and go Vols. So Bears and Vols fan.
No. What would be the worst possible combination of pro team fandom and college team fandom?
That's a good summer topic. Yeah.
What are we already?
We need to bookmark that one.
We're already in June. All right, I'll put it in my notes.
Daniel Ball says Jim Wyatt doing a, quote, wardrobe check instead of a britches report. I don't know what you're talking about, Daniel. We got a britches report today.
What?
Yeah, we got a britches report today.
No, Jimmy didn't do that. I saw the britches report. I retweeted the britches report.
We got the britches report like we always do.
Yeah, but he teased it in 3 parts. And I said in the green room this morning, because Wyatt puts out the britches report, which is the uniform report for what the team is going to wear if you're unfamiliar. And if you are, I don't know how. That's humanly possible at this point. But, no, it is a wardrobe. It says wardrobe check.
Oh, he didn't put britches report in when he actually reported it?
Wardrobe check with the little siren emojis. The Titans will be decked out in all white jerseys, britches, and socks in Sunday's game versus the Seahawks. # britches report.
Oh, okay. Well, that's fine.
So it's in there, but it's not the lead. You're right. I'm offended by that.
So many people get excited for that. It's such a bright spot on the timeline every week.
It's just the only thing that's pure left in our lives.
Yeah, at least right now after Sunday.
What's the uniform that the team is going to wear? Now, I said because Wyatt put out, this was a 3-part britches report, which made me laugh this morning. Jimmy put this out this morning. First, it's about that time. Titans, # britches report with a pants emoji. Love that Jimmy's a big fan of the emojis. Then he says, I have a feeling this combo, in a separate tweet, he says, I have a feeling this combo will be well received, .. # britches report. So he's teasing something. So in my heart, I'm like, oh, God, no. They can't do, I'm thinking in my head, they can't do the Oilers throwbacks yet, can they? That's not been officially approved by the league this year. They can't do that because the worst possible case scenario is somebody in the Titans business office thinking, you know what'll fix what that atrocity on the field was on Sunday? If we send them out to Seattle,
roll them out
with the damn Oilers throwbacks. just to have, because they wore that in a preseason game, right, and got stomped
years ago,
something like that, or they wore it in a game against New England.
It was the Hall of Fame game. They wore it in a Hall of Fame game.
Okay.
Years ago, and there's like the greatest fake punt in NFL history.
I thought there was some kind of curse associated with the Oilers throwback. 615-737-1045. What's the dumbest thing in sports this week? But I was thinking to myself, please God, no, don't let them do this to themselves. I mean, maybe a part of me, I won't lie to you, a part of me was rooting for it because that would be utter catastrophe, and catastrophe is good for me in the sports talk radio business. But Jesus, would that have been a bad situation? 615-737-1045. What's the dumbest thing in sports this week? Sydney is in Nashville and wants to weigh in. What's up, Sid?
Buck, this is not Sydney, but this is Coach Bobby Petrino, formerly of the University of Louisville Cardinals.
Okay, Coach.
The Atlanta Falcons, Arkansas Razorbacks, Western Kentucky University Hilltoppers, and University of Louisville Cardinals. Heck, I don't even know where I am today. But the dumbest thing in sports, Buck, is that you told everyone that Urban Meyer is shady. How dare you take that label away from me, my friend? How dare you? I am the most shadiest coach off. But I can tell you, I've never told a university president or an NFL team owner that I'm going somewhere and then the next week I'm gone. I can tell you that. That doesn't make me shady.
That's
Urban Meyer may be the shadiest, but I take that. I have never lied to the state police. I've never cheated on my wife. And, Buck, I'll tell you, the media and fans may have labeled me the most honest head football coach ever. in at least the 2000 era. That's the dumbest thing in sports that you've ever said, Buck, about Urban Meyer. He's a good man. He might help health problems before it's all over with. Buck, I appreciate the show. Love you guys. You all have a great day.
Rackham. Thank you, fake Bobby Petrino. I hope that fake Bobby Petrino calls us more regularly. That would make me very happy. If we just start having imitation coaches and people in sports that become sports talk radio callers, would delight me. We'll come back and continue this conversation and begin. I want to take a look at the Titans secondary specifically because Amani Hooker got placed on IR yesterday, meaning that he is required to miss at least 3 weeks. It's a not ideal situation for the Tennessee Titans, but I have an idea as to who might fill into his starting role. I'll tell you who that is coming up next, and we'll take your calls as well. 615-737-1045. I'm Buck Reising. This is 1045 The Zone.
Mike Keith and Coach Mack bring every Titans game to your smartphone. Hear every game. There's your answer. By downloading the 1045 The Zone app.
How long he will stay there is yet to be determined, but we know that it's a minimum of 3 weeks. They can bring him back after that time period has passed. It may be longer, but it cannot be shorter. That much we know. So we're talking about now the Seahawks game. We're talking about home against the Colts. And I believe, if I am not mistaken, that next game is at the New York Jets. So we can rule him out for those 3 weeks. I will say that they are perilously thin in the secondary, and that was the place where you thought they had as good a depth as anywhere, right? Maybe that was a wrong assumption. Maybe that was something that we just looked at based on the number of bodies that were there and the potential that the talent has and said, yeah, you know what? Okay, they're going to be all right. They may still be all right. They have some guys who have starting experience behind Amani Hooker, but Amani Hooker is turning into one of your most competent and confident defensive players. He's the classic success story of a guy that you draft for a primarily special teams role and depth role on defense, and then he develops into a starter and can play at we'll see how high a level, but so far has been, you're comfortable with him, right? You're comfortable with the combination of him and Kevin Byard. So when I look at this, I immediately started to draw my attention to, all right, who's next on the depth chart, right? The classic fantasy football conversation. Who's up next? Next man up, however you want to say it. And my eye immediately was drawn to Matthias Farley. Now, Matthias Farley, who was signed this year in free agency, he's 29 years old, been a starter in the league for a couple of years, most recently with the Jets, started with the Colts, 15 games at safety with the Colts in 2017. He's not anything terribly special. Now, he was the best source of your offensive momentum, by the way, on Sunday, because he threw a pass to Amani Hooker, speaking of which, that on a fake punt kept the play or tried to keep the momentum going for an offense that desperately needed juice. That's how I knew that that was pretty early in the game. That's how I knew that they were getting desperate, because already inside of his own 30, Mike Vrabel was calling trick plays. That's a red flag right out the gate. But it was a good play, and it was a good throw, honestly. Not a ton of zip on it, but there didn't need to be. It's just a quick pop pass on, what do they call, one of those Texas routes. So my eye was immediately attracted to Matthias Farley, and we had seen him do a little bit on defense, but not a ton. But then the more that I talked to people about it, and when I started to look at the snap counts and who came in once they started to pull the starters out of the game against Arizona when it was clear that it was going to be a blowout, I looked at Bradley McDougald. Bradley McDougald, who also has a relative amount of starting experience in the NFL. Again, nothing crazy, nothing that jumps off the page at you. He's an average NFL starting safety, maybe a little below at times. But with Bradley McDougald, what we have seen from him has been good on tape. I think you feel pretty comfortable about the idea of him slotting in. It's the reason he was initially cut, then brought back to the practice squad, then elevated from the practice squad to the active roster. And now I would anticipate him being one of your starters at safety against Seattle. Also, by the way, a former Seahawk himself. So he has familiarity with Russell Wilson, with those skill position players. Maybe not necessarily that offense because it's a new offense, but still, he understands principles and tendencies. So he's your best available option right now. And speaking of which, it just so happens that Bradley McDougald will join us tomorrow on the radio show at 11:15, and we'll talk about the opportunity that's in front of him. So you can look forward to that with the Titans starting safety in week 2. I think, the questions about the secondary are this. Is that what the Jackrabbit Jenkins experience is going to look like? Because I don't think all of the tape on Jackrabbit was bad. I think DeAndre Hopkins just gave him the work. It was not a fair matchup. And that ended up being the defensive back, the corner who spent the most time around DeAndre Hopkins. They tried it with a couple different guys. It wasn't successful with about anybody. But there was an active and conscious effort to try and take away as much of DeAndre Hopkins as was humanly possible. And he summarily thwarted that effort. So Christian Fulton, probably the biggest highlight of any of that on Sunday. Mike Vrabel has talked about that as well. He seems to be comfortable out there. You feel comfortable with him on the outside. I think of all the things that you were watching, I don't know how many of you out there isolated the cornerback play, but to watch Christian Fulton make plays on the ball, probably should have had an interception, but he over-pursued on one route that Kyler threw and just kind of missed the ball by about a half an inch. There were some good breakups in the end zone. There were some good plays on film from Christian Fulton. Elijah Molden did have a missed tackle on a blitz that he had the opportunity to make a play in the backfield. Other than that, I didn't see much that concerned me. He did have a touchdown pass thrown to Christian Kirk over Elijah Molden that he was summarily beat off the line of scrimmage. But there was enough there that you felt comfortable about Molden. Where Caleb Farley factors into all of this, I think has yet to be seen. He played on field goal block throughout the course of the game, primarily special teams, and then when it was a blowout officially, when they started putting in the depth players, he lined up exclusively, and I don't know how many people noticed this, but Caleb Farley lined up exclusively on the left side of the defense as the outside corner on the left side. I don't know if that's just what they want to focus on with him first, or whether that is done, whether that was done with any other kind of specific intention. I was not surprised to see him not get defensive snaps until it was officially a blowout. And frankly, I'm glad that they used that opportunity to get him some snaps because he needs it. He's not going to get those kind of reps in practice anymore, and the preseason is long behind us. I would not anticipate Caleb Farley participating at safety or really any more on defense than he did on Sunday against the Arizona Cardinals. Now, the hope is that he can get ramped up and he can make contributions, but that time is not yet here. When we come back, we'll talk about Taylor Lewan because a film clip went viral yesterday that I think needs to be focused on specifically. A film clip of Taylor Lewan getting, for all intents and purposes, dummied by a safety on a blitz. We'll talk about it coming up next. Your input is welcome. Will Compton, his teammate, former and current on Bustin' with the Boys, will join us for his recurring segment at 12:20, and we'll get into it with Will as well. I'm Buck Reising. This is 104.5 The Zone.
J. Martin Ramon, make you think.
You have the opportunity to have Julio Jones or A.J. Brown. Not both.
If I got to choose between one or the other, or this year in year 2021,
yes,
I'm taking Julio. Till we see what AJ is going to do this season, I think he's going to have a good season. I'll say this. I honestly think he's going to have more yards because I feel like the alliance that he's built with Tannehill is going to say that the ball comes to you first. Right now,
yes,
I'm taking Julio.
Tomorrow morning from 6 to 10 on 104.5 The Zone.
This is Damon Amendolara with a CBS Sports Minute. A damning statistic went viral yesterday regarding Lamar Jackson. Since the beginning of last season, 51 different NFL QBs have thrown for at least 250 yards in the game. That includes such greats as Dwayne Haskins, Jeff Driscoll, and Mike Glennon. That list does not include Lamar Jackson. Now, Lamar has done it before, and last year he had 240 yards passing in a game. But is this a big deal? No, it's a misleading stat, because when you combine his rushing and his passing, there's not 51 other QBs as productive as he is. And they certainly aren't winning as much as he is. Jackson lost 2 fumbles and a 2-touchdown lead Monday night, so there's plenty of things to work on. But being on the same list as Jeff Driscoll isn't one of them. This is Damon Amendolara.
CBS Sports Radio.
With M.
on 104.5 The Zone. So happy to have you along for the ride. A lot going on today. A lot of people that we've heard from. You'll hear from Titans head coach Mike Vrabel, who spoke earlier today on 3 specific things. Will Compton of Bussin' with the Boys will be here in about 15 minutes, and we'll talk about his co-host's struggles over the weekend. We'll also talk about what it's like to game plan for Russell Wilson, because Will, for as much hell as I give him, was spectacular. Talking about not that Will. I don't care about that Will. Get that Will out of my face. But Will Bowling, who popped, it's like a whack-a-mole. You see him just pop his head across the plexiglass, and you just go whack him, send him back into the shadows, like I do with Lucas when he talks too much. 615-737-1045 is the number. 615-737-1045. Speaking of news, breaking news out of Cleveland. For those of you who were foolish enough to draft Odell Beckham Jr. onto your fantasy teams, he has been ruled out against the Houston Texans, so something to keep in mind as well. But as for the Titans, we're going to talk about Taylor Lewan specifically here. Now, Mike Vrabel just wrapped up his press conference, and he was asked about this specifically because Taylor is going to be on the rebound. I put out that play that went viral yesterday and a bit into today of Budda Baker basically punking him, going to an inside, going straight at Taylor Lewan when it looks like Taylor Lewan thinks he's going to the outside. Taylor tries to overcorrect. Budda Baker catches him off balance, gets bulldozed by a tiny little safety. It's not great. Budda Baker's a great player. And it is a game of leverage. As a low man wins, right? And Budda Baker is decidedly lower than Taylor Lewan. But it was still shocking to see a 300-plus pound left tackle leave his feet at the hands of a safety. Anyway, Mike Vrabel was asked about this today, and this was his response.
Well, I mean, you get beat, and sometimes, that happens, and so, we have to improve. Taylor has to improve. We've said this before in this league, your best players, they have to play good on Sunday for you to win. That's how this game is set up, and that didn't happen for us. It happened for Arizona yesterday, and so we have to get those guys ready to go to get on the road. It won't get any easier. We'll go out to Seattle, so we'll have to get going here pretty quickly, make these corrections, flush it, and be ready to get focused on Wednesday, with a game plan and a way to go out and try to find a way to win.
Mike Vrabel talking about his left tackle and the struggles on Sunday. He didn't look ready, and I don't think that he went out there thinking that he was not ready, talking about Taylor Lewan, but he did not look as ready as he thought that he was, right? Now, you can, whether you choose to have some grace about this, is entirely up to you. I'm still getting tagged, or things that I'm tweeting about are still having Taylor Lewan tagged in them because people are pissed. People are understandably furious about what happened on Sunday and the fact that today it was announced that Chandler Jones, for his performance and his accolades against the Tennessee Titans, is named the NFC Defensive Player of the Week. Mostly at the expense of Taylor Lewan. Not exclusively, because everybody got the business. Getting the lamb included. And the strip sack, by the way, neither of the strip sacks were on Taylor Lewan, although that's no justification for his performance. He just didn't look ready out there. And that's something that we will see progress, one would imagine, as he gains trust in his knee, as he gains trust in his technique. It's not, ACLs are routine, and Bud Dupree doesn't look to be struggling terribly. I thought Bud Dupree looked pretty good laterally. As far as mobility and agility are concerned, I thought Bud Dupree looked competent out there. And his was more recent than Taylor Lewan's. But as you talk about this and as you look at the tape on this, you will see somebody who doesn't necessarily trust what he's out there to do, trust himself physically. And after a couple of times of getting that exposed early, you saw the snowball effect that it had. 615-737-1045 is how you jump in on the conversation. And then there's the kicker. So, Lucas, if we could update the polls quickly, at least one in particular, because the Titans have a new kicker. His name is Randy Bullock. He is lovingly referred to on the internet as Fat Randy, so we just simply put it to a no-context poll. Fat Randy, ? Yes or no?
Okay.
What are the results?
It's 50-50.
Oh, good.
It's a dead split. That's amazing.
You can't write
People
it.
are on the fence.
Oh, it's
They're on the
perfect.
fence.
Fat Randy on the fence.
Not what I don't know what I expected, but it wasn't that.
It's perfect. We could not have planned that better. All right, let's
Also, just on that note, we asked what do the Titans need to improve on most before the Seahawks game, and still 50 minutes to go, but well over 600 votes. Kicking was one option. 0% of voters have chosen kicking.
It's a fraction of 1% because I saw it went from 1% down to 0.
Okay.
But, people are numb to it. I mean, hell, listen to Mike Vrabel. Doesn't he sound numb to the kicking situation? Earlier at the podium today, he was asked about, the performance of the kicker and Sam Ficken and now through Michael Badgley and now Randy Bullock, and this was the Titans head coach.
Every time we go out there to kick, I hope they do their job, Jim, no matter who it is, whether it's Brett Kern, whether it's Randy, or the 53 other kickers that we've had here in the 3 years that I've been here.
Doesn't he sound numb to it too?
He's done.
Oh, my God. He's as over it as all of us are. What's he going to do? Yeah, I expect him to make their damn kicks.
Does he just spend the first-round pick on a kicker next season?
Yeah, okay, and then be the Tampa Bay Buccaneers? Or what was the Aguayo kid a second-round pick?
Second-round pick, and that did not work out. Mr. Perfect.
No, and now so instead they took the Titans kicker, and now they're Super Bowl champions.
Worked out.
Oh, God. I just think all of it is so funny. It's not funny because it continues to spiral out of control, the kicking situation. Again, 11 damn kickers since the start of the 2019 season. It is unreal. And by the way, Ryan Santoso got cut yesterday by the Panthers. So if you want him, he's back out there, back available on the market. What I will say to you, though, is it seems like more and more every day, or how should I phrase this? There is not a sense that Stephen Gostkowski will be back. That seems to be the vibe that is emanating out of the Titans kicking situation right now. It does not seem like Stephen Gostkowski, whether he's an option or not, he may well be an option and not be one that they land on. It ultimately just does not seem like it's trending that direction, as is evidenced by the fact that Fat Randy is now your kicker. And Fat Randy is not that fat, so as somebody who is sensitive about their weight right now and is getting ready to be joined by a guest who's going to harass me about my weight.
You're lashing out.
I am lashing out. I'm sensitive. God, if my nickname was Fat Buck, can you imagine? Fat Randy.
I hope Compton's not listening, because if you utter that in front of him, you're done.
Well, I sent him a picture of what the Raiders. Did you see the Raiders press box donut spread last night that Steve Weish of the NFL Network tweeted out?
My God.
I sent that to Will. I said, they're clearly just trying to sabotage us. It's not just that I don't have any self-control when I'm sitting in a press box for 16 hours and watching one football game and eating out of boredom. It's the fact that they're just trying. This is the NFL's plan to get rid of the media. They're just going to give us all diabetes in the media lounge and get rid of us that way. 615-737-1045. Josh is in Nashville. He wants to talk about the kicker. What's up, Josh?
Yeah, guys. Hey, good afternoon. Just a little idea. What if we go over to the soccer club and over there, maybe strike a trade or something to get us a good kicker? Might be a good option for us.
The fact that it's even asked, and thank you for the call, Josh. It speaks to the desperation of the situation.
That's the high school football coach strategy. Just go ask the soccer coach.
My high school football coach did do that, and it worked out very well.
It works out for a lot of coaches.
Harry Hatfield. He was too lazy for soccer, so they sent him to the football team and said, hey, bud, all you got to do is make your kicks. Go get him, Tiger. What a great name. Harry Hatfield, the kicker. 615-737-1045. Coming up next, Will Compton, one half of Bussin' with the Boys. We will talk to him about his co-host's performance on Sunday. We will also talk to him about game planning for Russell Wilson, because he has done it at several points in his career. All that and more coming up next. I'm Buck Reising. This is 104.5 The Zone.
With an expanding SEC coming, Coach Josh Heupel is out to bring you a much-improved fall season.
This is Coach Josh Heupel. Follow all of the action of Tennessee football all season here on your home of the Vols, 104.5 The Zone.
Episodes come out every Wednesday. The YouTube edition of Bussin' with the Boys debuts on Wednesday at 6 p.m. each week. Hello, William.
Buck, how are you doing, man? Good afternoon.
I'm well. I'm glowing in radioactive material from what I experienced at Nissan Stadium on Sunday, but I'm doing good. I'm doing good.
Yeah, Sunday was a long one.
So let's walk the audience through this from your perspective, because the Bussin' tailgate looks like a rousing success. My girlfriend went to her first Titans game only after attending the Bussin' with the Boys tailgate.
What do you think?
She showed up hammered, so I'm not sure what she thought, but I'm glad that a good time was had by all. I went down to say hi to her at halftime, and she reeked of vodka and lemonade. So God knows what went on at Acme prior to the game. But so then the game begins, and the game goes the way that it does, and the Titans struggle mightily, and Chandler Jones is now the NFC's Defensive Player of the Week. And the bus is now a talking point in week 1 of the NFL season because your co-host had a bit of a time out there. What has your experience been like dealing with that? Because you've been active in fighting off the trolls on the internet.
Yeah, I had to take my talents. I had to look out for my family in the best interest of the victory lattes, and I had to move it to the Raiders for a week. But yeah, it was tough, man. Listen, and as far as the bus and stuff goes, you have a good brand when it gets used for likes, retweets. It's such an easy play. And, it's like it sucks at the same time, but also our brand is what it is. And everybody wants to use it because when they see that the boy gives up a sack or he plays bad, that's such an immediate go-to because, he does both things.
No, it's fair. And I know that you went ahead and used the line anyway. It's okay. I don't want public credit, but I'm going to take it for myself anyway. Talking about the bottom feeders who came after you.
Yeah. Yes. So, yeah, day of the game, dude, it's highly emotional. Listen, at the end of the day, boys, the boys lost. The standings say 0-1. We lost in a bad fashion. It looked bad. Everybody can twist and be like, here's all the glaring spots. You can go and do Buck Reising's polls that he does every day where he's like, oh, what do we got to do? What are we going to do to get better? But at the end of the day, the boys are 0-1. And, if you look back in history, they would start off 2-4 before they played the Chiefs before a bye week. Everybody was ready to quit then. Everybody was giving up them. Everybody was packing up their bags.
I thought they were dead. I thought they were dead.
Everyone was figuring out, what's New Year's plans? What are we doing after the season's over? This, that, the other. The boys going to tear, go 9-7, go to the AFC Championship. It's one game. And yeah, there's a lot of stuff to fix, but I've been in the locker room. I know it's going to be nothing but accountability and optimism going into week 2 and trying to find a way to fix it.
We talked to Mike Vrabel earlier today. He gave a press conference, and we'll talk about that here in just a second. But Andy has called in. He wants to talk about Taylor Lewan, and why don't we do that since Will Compton's on the show? What's up, Andy?
What's going on, Buck? You're the best sports tweeter on the web. I wanted to thank Mrs. Lewan for coming on to defend him. It's absurd. Take the heat. When you got the guy who talks so much mess, he shows up to sign his contract, dressed like Boss Hog, talks a lot of grief, and it's enjoyable. At the end of the day, not trusting the knee, not believing in this. I'm sure you can believe and trust in the check that shows up. Let's perform. Let's quit talking about, and by the way, that Chiefs game, that was when Patrick Mahomes came back a game too early from an injury, so let's not put too much good on it. Good luck with that bus, Chief.
Andy with some heat.
He doesn't get to stay on the phone?
Well, no, Lucas drops them pretty quickly because he gets scared.
I didn't drop him. You dropped him.
I didn't do that.
Then he hung up. He was scared.
Again, this is nothing other than somebody tweeting me. This is nothing other than somebody going in my Twitter mentions, continuing to be a bottom feeder and saying something easy. He's not.
Yeah, no, listen, this is the problem because I'm going to articulate this from both sides, okay? Because that's what I do. I talk for a living. I articulate. Let's look at this from all angles, okay? Taylor Lewan and the Titans collectively, all right? Wasn't just Taylor. Taylor's just the most noticeable because Taylor's one of the biggest personalities. Taylor carries himself the way that he does, and that does not translate well when you play a bad game because all of the heat is going to come for you whether you have a podcast or not. All well and good. On the other side, in that same clip that everybody is highlighting, it's not just Taylor. It's the entirety of the offensive line. It's getting walked back into Ryan Tannehill's face. Taylor is among the easiest targets on the field. Everybody listening to this understands that they didn't play well. Will has just articulated this from the players' side. You are going to flush this down the drain. You're going to move on to the game plan against Seattle, and you're going to try and take what Kyler Murray did to you and try to make sure that Russell Wilson can't do it to you. That's basically the entire summary of what the last 4 days of Twitter interaction and phone calls and DMs and God knows what other poisonous stuff that's been infiltrating all of our timelines over the last 72 hours. Did I do that well?
You did. Hey, you did. You did a very good job of that.
All right, thank you.
You know, it's all the same, like press conference answers and everything else. Like at the end of the day, the boys have a new week. Everyone gets to wake up. The mantra, like every day you come to work, you're going to come in the facility. It's going to be all about controlling your attitude and your effort when you come to work. Accountability. The boys are going to have optimism. They're going to have accountability. If not, you're going to dwell. When you dwell, you know, you can't look at the big picture because you want to be stuck in your own photo, making excuses and everything else. So at the end of the day, the boys got to be accountable. They got to have optimism. They got to bring that BD this week at practice, and they got to bounce back. It's a get back on track week, dude.
Noted Raider Will Compton with us here on 104.5 The Zone. Bussing with the Boys, podcast out, subscribe, rate, and review. Jeffrey Simmons is this week's guest. Now, it's important to note that Jeff was taped before this game, so there will not be post-game reaction with Jeff Simmons for those of you who are going and seeking accountability, at least current event accountability on the podcast. That is not available to you just yet, but I'm sure it will be discussed at a later date. So with Russell Wilson, have you played Russell Wilson in your career, either with Washington or I don't think Tennessee played him while you were here.
Yeah, I did at Washington. Listen, I don't want to give myself credit. I don't want to brag too much, but I have an interception out there on Russell Wilson.
Oh, Lucas, quickly, rack him. Love to see it. Will Compton, noted interceptor of Russell Wilson passes, here with us to dissect his game with great importance. Yeah, that was real.
I don't like to brag.
Go ahead and pick that name that you just dropped up off the ground.
Yeah, I know, right? I know. No, dude, the stadium's awesome to play in. They got the 12-man. It's a cool atmosphere. Seattle, I mean, the whole NFC, what is it, the NFC West?
Undefeated this weekend.
Everybody's undefeated, yeah. So it'll be fun to watch, man. Russell Wilson is a stud. You're going to have to get off the field on third down, similar to just like Murray, although he's not as quick and everything else as Murray. The dude is, he's got a brain like Peyton Manning, and he's got feet close to Murray. So they'll have their hands full with him on third down, but the boys will have their work cut out for them.
Yeah, so I guess kind of you outlined some of it there, but and I know you haven't played Kyler Murray and you've played Russell Wilson. What kind of sets them apart, though, as players? Because I think people kind of lump them into the same category, and that's not something necessarily they should be doing.
Yeah, I don't know what category is that. Is that the category of being a scrambling QB?
Just like a mobile. I think they're just generalized as mobile running quarterbacks when that's not Russell Wilson's game entirely.
Yeah, I mean, to be in the category with Russell Wilson, I think Murray's got a ways to go before you can categorize him with Russell. I mean, he does it year in and year out. He's always an MVP candidate. He can get himself out of trouble. He can run. He can obviously throw the ball really well. They'll have to, do some things up top of Lockett, DK Metcalf. I'm not very familiar with how their defense performed this past weekend, but Seattle, they've always been a good football team.
Yeah, no, they played the Colts this weekend, and they played well. They sacked Carson Wentz 4 times. They looked a lot better than they have in recent years because that side of the ball has been down for them since they broke apart the Legion of Boom after the Super Bowl runs. But yeah, I think that the Russell Wilson situation, I watched that game on replay because obviously I didn't get the opportunity to watch it live. The Titans played their game earlier in the afternoon, and we were in press conferences, so I watched it on Game Pass. And the more that I think about this matchup, it's so hard for me to imagine that there's a quarterback that can have a better game than Kyler Murray did on Sunday. And I don't think it was because of what the defense was doing to allow him to have such a good game. I thought the defense, honestly, early held up pretty well in what their strategy was. He's just a freakish athlete in the way that he juked the defense out of their souls 3 different times before he launched a pass to Rondale Moore on 3rd and 10 for 18 yards. Like, There are only so many things you can do against a playmaking quarterback like that, and that's, again, the challenge that they have this week.
100%. Yeah, like you said it well. The defense was playing was playing decent. I mean, it's just tough when Kyler's back there running around and buying time. You can't cover for 10 seconds at a time. And then, also it's all complimentary football. Like the one time they got in a bad situation because they recovered the ball at the goal line and they almost had a phenomenal goal line stand, but Kyler Murray makes a play with his feet, throws it up to D-Hop there in the end zone, and D-Hop's one of the best in the league. But yeah, man, it's tough to judge. It's tough to give too much an opinion on the defense right now just because of what Kyler Murray was doing and how much time he was buying and the plays that they were making on third down and making the play last longer.
All right, let's talk about the podcast that you did with Big Jeff this week because he's a fascination for Titans fans. He's somebody who there are sky-high expectations for, and he's one of the most honest people that we get the opportunity to talk to. He's been a guest on this show. We've had, obviously, many, many press conferences with Big Jeff throughout the course of his career. And I thought the interview that you guys did with him, he's not scared to say things in a way that a lot of guys in his position might be, and he's not necessarily slow to warm up the way that somebody like A.J. Brown was the first time that you guys had him on the podcast. What was the experience like with Big Jeff, and what were you kind of trying to learn about him as an interview subject?
Yeah, I thought a great thing that the Titans did recently, their media team, shout out their media team and PR team for that little mini docuseries that they did on Jeff and A.J. Brown out of Mississippi, because I didn't know a whole lot about Jeff. The only thing I knew about Jeff was being in the locker room with him last year. But outside of that, Jason Hatcher, who his uncle is, who I played with in Washington. So I had familiarity with him through Uncle Hatch, as I like to call him. But other than that, I didn't know a whole lot about like Mississippi State, his upbringing and stuff like that. And I thought they did a lot of good things of painting the picture for us of who Jeff Simmons is on that mini docuseries, because the way he is in the locker room, we got to jab at him for his sensitivity at times, how his family said he was like a crybaby growing up. So we got to just have a lot of fun with him there. And then everybody in our locker room, any locker room you're at, the boys are always joking on each other about stuff, whether it's photos, old photos. You gotta keep stuff close to the vest, and you can't let too much get out there because the boys will drag you in the locker room. And so when you had the photo, Jeff's known for dragging guys in the locker room. So when you have the photo of him as a young buck with that suit on, that the blonde hair on the top, his head looked like a kettlebell. Like he just has fun, man. He didn't take stuff too seriously. We've had a rapport with him throughout the last year. He bothered us. He was on us heavy about getting him a Spooktober shirt last year. And he's always badgered me about getting on the bus. So he finally got his shot. And he didn't shy away from the lights.
Am I keeping pace with him as far as YouTube? Well, I guess we won't know until the YouTube episode comes out. The night of Bussin' with the Boys.
So far with Raj, I'm sure I just knew you were looking. I know you're looking. I know you're kind of measuring it up because you want to have some respect. I can respect that.
Listen, it's like people tweeting you that you're washed, and then you do a one-handed pull-up and you say, absolutely not washed. People have been sleeping on you since day one. People have been sleeping on us, William. We cannot tolerate this disrespect.
It's tough, man. When you're out there and you talk a lot, like people just want to sleep on you, man. It's tough when people want to see you and drag you down to the depths of the ocean that badly that they go to whatever, they reach for whatever they can to try to kill your vibe, and they just can't do it.
All right, so let's talk about this in more detail, because I know this kind of lot. It's been a long time since I've been in a locker room as like a player. Obviously, since high school was the last time that I had any kind of athletic ability. But I know the kind of, everybody can relate to the kind of vibe that you're talking about, where your buddies in the locker room absolutely drag you. And I'm not sure what Blas just said to make you laugh, but I'm going to find Blas.
I think we're all just kind of thinking about the softball game. So
yeah, no, the softball game was not a great display of athletic ability. Much easier to do when you're on the defensive line and you don't have to do anything that's more athletic than running into somebody in front of you. Anyway, with the locker room dynamic, what's the worst burn that somebody got you on that you felt like that you had to like talk yourself down from? Like, who got you too good one time and it stuck with you after the fact? Because I know this exists. It's happened to all of us, where it goes just a hair too far and you feel it for maybe a day after, a couple hours after, and it doesn't necessarily feel as congenial as most of your locker room talk would.
Yeah, I think to get to the point, like growing up with the teeth that I had and getting badgered for my voice and everything like that growing up, like you got to go through some vulnerable, sensitive times as a young buck to like get to where you're like, okay, everything's just not that serious. But I would say being in the NFL, probably the one time where I sat on the plane, it was just like, damn, I'm down bad right now. The kid's down bad. Was definitely when you think you have a good fit going on the plane. There was one time walking on the plane, everybody's like, "Oh, that man come. He just went to Joseph A. Bank and asked for what was on the mannequin." And everyone's just trashing me to the back of the plane. And I remember like, kind of laughing and stuff. And I sit down like, damn, I really thought I did look good too. So that's probably a time that I always remember.
That happened to me on Sunday. I thought I had a nice outfit picked out, and then somebody tweeted me, said I look like a revival tent preacher, and I couldn't unsee it.
I'm telling you, hey, that's why I'll just go. That's why I'll do some reaches with the fits that I do have, because I know they can be fun and stuff like that. I'm just like, hey, you kind of just not have to care, because if you do care, you're gonna get your feelings hurt at some point.
This reminds me of a text exchange that we had earlier in the week about feelings, but one that we will not rehash here. Will Compton of Bussin' with the Boys here with us on 104.5 The Zone. His weekly appearance presented by All American Pest Control. Plans as low as $39. Visit yuckbugs.com. Subscribe, rate, review, resubscribe, unsubscribe, resubscribe. Make sure you're checking out the content that the boys are producing on a weekly basis. And remember, it's just a podcast. It doesn't mean anything on the football field. All of you relax. Thanks, buddy.
Right. Hey, Buck, my man, keep your sanity. The boys are just 0-1. Don't let these boys drag you down like that.
No, it's not dragging me down. You know how easy my job was on Monday? There's nothing wrong with a little disaster every once in a while.
What makes it your job? What makes you probably got to?
Well, I didn't have to go until he froze up, so that's perfect timing. Let's get out of here. He had a good point he was ready to make, and the internet has betrayed him. We'll come back. We'll do polls up next.
The flooding in Humphreys County even displaced a football team. So the Waverly Tigers will take on the White House Blue Devils at Nissan Stadium. You can help our neighbors in Humphreys County. Head to TennesseeTitans.com/donate to Waverly. All proceeds go directly to the United Way of Humphreys County. Tomorrow night, for one night only, Titans Radio becomes Tigers Radio. Hear our crew. 5 Zone.
starts freezing in the final minutes of last segment. What was the question that you asked?
What was he trying to say? He had a point to make.
He did. What have we? Are we lumping that in with the polls?
No, I said tune in next week to find out.
The rare week-long radio tease.
Yes, in 7 days.
God, what will we be talking about in 7 days? God knows.
Guess we'll find out Sunday.
An 0-2 Titans team, it feels like. But, they have surprised. That Kansas City game is a great example because that was as shocking an outcome. Now, it took every ounce of strength that they had in the Kansas City game, the regular season game. In the 2019 season, where they were kind of teetering on the edge, because Will said it was 2-4. They were further along in the season than 2-4, if I recall correctly, because that was coming off of the loss in week 9 to Carolina. That Chiefs game, if I remember correctly, was week 10. So they lost the game at Carolina, and they figured out the offense, it felt like, in the second half. Then, Kansas City was the tipping point, right? This was the lose and go home scenario that early in the season for them. And they had the blocked field goal by Josh Kalu. They had the fumble that was caused by David Long that was recovered for a touchdown by Rashaan Evans. The last time there was glowing praise from Titans fans about Rashaan Evans, it feels like. And Mahomes, coming off a bad knee, still played lights out. Like, he was great. He was zipping jump passes off one leg to, who's the Georgia receiver that they have? Mecole Hardman. Zipping him down the field to Mecole Hardman for 75 yards on a bum leg. And, still out there making plays. Now, they beat the Chiefs in that game. And so to say that they are not capable of beating Seattle is an overstatement. I think that they are capable. It's a question as to whether they're too talented to look that bad. It's like the Browns in, I think, also 2019, where the Browns had all that hype around them. They opened with the Titans in Cleveland. They got their skulls caved in. And Delaney Walker had the quote, they are who we thought they were, yada, yada, yada. You still got to play football and all that. That's what I thought of the Titans on Sunday. When I was watching that team, it reminded me of the 2019 Cleveland Browns. And so, the result we will have time to see, and we'll dissect it. Greg Cosell and myself, by the way, we're going to tape the install later this afternoon. That will be available in your podcast feeds by 6 p.m. Central Time, so you can understand on a deeper level what went wrong for the Titans, what the Cardinals were doing to exploit them, and how they match up against the Seattle Seahawks based on that result. Polls.
I don't know who you are, but I know what it's time for. A poll update on the Buck Reising Show. Here's a young man with a very particular set of skills. With the final numbers, here's Buck Reising Show correspondent and producer, Lucas Panzica.
By the way, Spencer gives us an 8-2 today.
I thought we had a good show.
Good show.
I think it was a good show. Subscribe, rate, review, the Buck Reising Show.
Who should be the next head coach at USC? Flannel Fred says, at Lucas Panzica. Thanks, Flannel Fred. I don't want that job, though. Karen O'Keefe says, Urban Meyer. Goody says, can we all just hope it's Urban Meyer so Jacksonville can continue to suffer? Probably suffer either way.
Yeah, they're going to suck either way. It's not going to be a pleasant conversation.
Smashvillian says, there's only one hero who can bring them back to greatness. It's a great gif of Jeff Fisher running out onto the field.
USC, Jeff Fisher?
Yeah, running out onto the field before a Titans game.
Kevin.
He played there, right?
Did he?
Yeah, I think he played at USC.
That sounds
defensive
right.
back.
I thought he was a linebacker. Either way.
Yeah, he did. He played at USC.
Very good.
Hibb says Jeremy Pruitt. No. Tim Chadwick has the gif of Butch Jones with the laying the bricks. Mark says Urban Meyer. Let's see. Ryan says Kiffin, just to see how Ole Miss fans would react.
I mean, Lane would never. Lane would never.
I hadn't even thought about that. I mean, that's not going to happen.
Well, were you not listening to the show when I talked about in literally the first segment, Lane Kiffin?
I guess not.
Thank you.
Houston says Bill O'Brien. And Kirian says, I'd take Urban just for the laughs.
Now, here's what I'll say, because Bill O'Brien is Alabama's offensive coordinator this year. I don't know how much, I'm sure people haven't forgotten that, but like that, I love that Alabama's just coaching rehab. Like Doug Marrone is down there as the offensive line coach. Bill O'Brien is the offensive coordinator.
Like that's insane.
That they just get all these guys out of the NFL and then they send them back out to get better jobs.
2 NFL head coaches as assistants is insane.
Well, who's the defensive coordinator?
Pete Golding. He's kind of come up under Nick Saban for a while. They struggled a little bit last year, but this defense is really coming into its own this year.
I don't think those are the only two. Now, the only two head coaches on that staff, but I don't think that. I'm certain that's not the only former NFL coach on that staff between those two.
You lose count.
But yeah, so I think Bill O'Brien will rehab his career in Alabama and then next year be the head coach of the Trojans.
What do the Titans need to improve on most before the Seahawks game? Pass rush, offensive chemistry, pass protection, or kicking? 700 votes here. 53 say pass pro, 42% say offensive chemistry, 3% pass rush, which was actually pretty solid. You know, Kyler Murray just running all over the place. 2% say kicking.
The offensive line has to be better. Whether it's in pass protection, whether it's in run blocking, the offensive line has to be better. And then second to that, I think that's 1A, but 1B is Todd Downing has to be better. That play calling in the early going, they figured it out as the game wore on with, once they started feeding A.J. Brown and getting Derrick Henry involved in more realistic situations when the passing game was more of a threat, then they looked competent. But in the first quarter and much of the second, they did not look any kind of cohesive.
Oh, and George says, we need Will Compton. He's a great locker room guy. He'll definitely help with all aspects.
What's he say? He says this every time he comes on. They're a Will Compton away from the Super Bowl.
Right.
But he doesn't even watch you today. He says he's a Raider today.
That's right. And majority of replies here just say all the above, which is obviously the correct answer.
That's correct.
Last poll, Fat Randy. Final verdict, 52% say yes.
Yes, Fat Randy. 50. So we had an upset in our favor. Fat Randy. Who Ramon Foster, I didn't know that Randy Bullock, who is now the Titans' 11th kicker in the last 3 years. Ramon Foster texted me and said, that Fat Randy thing didn't start in Pittsburgh, LOL. We just called him Randy. So I don't know who I'm pretty sure it was Big Cat from Barstool started the Fat Randy thing.
Well, people were very hesitant to even vote on that poll because we went from 700 votes on what do the Titans need to improve most to 91 on the Fat Randy poll.
I respect. Well, one,
people just scrolled right by it.
There is zero context to that, and I understand. But those are the ones that are most fun for me.
Those are the polls.
All right, very good. That's going to do it for us today. If you missed any of our content, the Buck Reising Show in your favorite podcast app, it's available to you. The install will be taped this afternoon. Bradley McDougald, who I expect to be the Titans starting safety alongside Kevin Byard on Sunday in Seattle, former Seahawk himself. He will join us on the radio show at 11:15, and we'll talk about that at great length. We will also spend some time on the Vols ahead of Tennessee Tech with Adam Sparks of the Knoxville News Sentinel. So you want to make sure that you're getting involved with all of that. I will say to you that as we move forward here, the situation for the Titans and the Vols, I think, is eerily similar. I am so interested to see what the next 2 weeks, well, really 3 weeks, because of what Florida is going to bring and what the Colts have on the doorstep. I don't want to start doing look-ahead games for either of these teams, but there are things that the Titans and the Colts have both together, the opportunity to get some things right ahead of games that matter infinitely more than the two that they will be playing this weekend. I'm not saying that you should dismiss the Seahawks because the Colts and the Texans and the Jags are all playing that same NFC West schedule. I do not expect them to fare very well against the NFC West, no more than I expect the Titans to fare against the NFC West. But it'll be interesting to see what they're able to build upon because, at least in the case of the Vols, the foundation is there. And for the Titans, based on last week, got to blow everything up and start it over again. We'll talk about it more tomorrow. In fact, the conversation will continue because Blaine and Mickey, they're up next.
Get Jason Martin and Ramon Foster on J. Mart and Ramon tomorrow morning from 6 to 10 on 104.5